A modern export terminal can pour 60,000 tons of grain into a ship in under 2 days. That single cargo can be worth more than $30 million, and almost none of it moves until a handful of people have decided exactly what that grain is. Grain reaches the terminal by 3 routes, and the choice is almost entirely about cost. Trucks bring it from nearby farms. Rail brings it further, in unit trains that can run 100 cars long and are unloaded as a single continuous operation. But the cheapest way to move bulk grain over long distances is water, which is why the majority of American export grain travels by barge, floating down the Mississippi or the Columbia toward the coast. A single river barge carries around 1,500 tons. String a tow of them together and one push boat is moving what would take hundreds of trucks. By the time grain reaches the terminal, it has usually already been consolidated 2 or 3 times. The name grain elevator is completely literal, and it describes the machine at the heart of the building. Arriving grain is dumped into a pit at ground level called the boot. From there, it's picked up by a leg. A tall vertical loop of belt with buckets bolted to it, running continuously between the bottom of the pit and the top of the building. The buckets scoop grain at the bottom, ride it all the way up, and fling it out into the headhouse at the top. Once grain is up there, gravity does the rest of the work, and spouts and conveyors can drop it into whichever bin the operator selects. That single idea, lift it once and then let it fall wherever you need it, is why these buildings are so tall. Before anything is stored, 2 things happen. The grain crosses a certified scale, because from this point on every transaction is by weight and that number has legal standing, and it's sampled. Automated probes pull grain from multiple points in the stream, because a single handful from the top of a truck tells you very little about 40 tons underneath. Those samples are what the entire rest of the process depends on. The grain itself is anonymous once it's in a bin, mixed with thousands of tons from other farms. The sample is the only thing that carries its identity. Then comes grading, which is where the real money is decided. At a U.S. export terminal, official inspection is done by trained teams, typically a handful of specialists working together. A shift supervisor, a weigher, a sampler, a grader, and someone running protein or mycotoxin analysis. They're measuring a specific list of things. Moisture content because wet grain spoils. Test weight, which is essentially the density and a rough proxy for quality. The percentage of damaged kernels, broken pieces, and foreign material. Protein level, which for wheat determines what it can be baked into. And contamination, especially mycotoxins produced by molds, which can make a cargo unsellable or even dangerous. That resulting grade is not a formality. It sets the price paid, and it determines whether the cargo can legally enter the destination country at all. An importing nation buys against a specification, and if the shipment arrives outside it, the consequences range from a price penalty to rejection of the entire vessel, which means a terminal is not merely a warehouse. It's a quality control checkpoint standing between 100,000 anonymous farm deliveries and a global market that will only accept a very specific product. Everything the building does downstream exists to hit those numbers, so the terminal actively fixes the grain. Cleaning happens in stages. Scalping screens pull out the oversized junk, straw, stalks, stones, and the occasional bolt. Aspiration blows air through the falling stream to lift out dust, chaff, and lightweight broken material. Finer screens then separate by size. What comes out the other side is a far more uniform product than what went in. If the grain is too wet, it goes through a dryer, where heated air pulls the moisture down to a level where it can be stored for months without molding or heating up. Getting that number wrong in either direction is expensive. Too wet and it spoils, too dry and you've burned fuel and lost weight you would have been paid for. Here's the part outsiders rarely realize. A terminal doesn't just sort grain, it composes it. With dozens of bins holding lots of differing quality, operators can blend a slightly low protein lot with a higher one to land precisely on the contracted specification. They can dilute a batch with marginally elevated damage using cleaner grain to bring the average inside limits. Done within the rules, this is simply efficient inventory management, and it's how a terminal turns a chaotic range of incoming farm loads into one consistent cargo. The ship's hold ends up filled with grain that no individual farm actually grew, assembled to a recipe. Then the cargo goes out. The terminal's shipping gallery runs out along the dock, and grain travels along conveyors before dropping down loading spouts into the ship's holds. It moves fast because time at berth is one of the most expensive things in shipping. That's how 60,000 tons can be loaded in under 2 days. Crews shift the spout around the hold and level the load, because grain that isn't properly trimmed can shift dangerously at sea. Large terminals are built around the dimensions of Panamax vessels, and the biggest facilities move several million tons in a single year. And that's what makes these buildings quietly critical. There are relatively few of them, they're expensive to build, and essentially all internationally traded grain funnels through one. When a river runs too low for barges, when a terminal strikes, or when ice or drought closes a route, the effect isn't local. It shows up as price movements in countries thousands of miles away that depend on those cargoes to feed people. The world's grain trade passes through a small number of very tall buildings at the water's edge. So a grain terminal is really the final gate between farming and the global food system. Grain enters as thousands of separate harvests, each with its own history and quality. It leaves as a single graded, cleaned, blended, weighed commodity, identified only by a number on a certificate. Everything personal about it, which field, which farmer, which season, disappears at the boot pit and never comes back. Follow along for more of the hidden infrastructure that moves the world's food.